You walk around this building and everyone is so supportive and so excited about what is happening with the Fever.
The basketball community is always debating a statement made in Indianapolis. At last, Amber Cox, general manager of the Fever, raised her voice. Additionally, her remarks on Caitlin Clark went beyond a corporate press release. Because it was clear-cut, truthful, and full of information, it portrayed a picture that most fans had never seen. Beyond what you've read in a headline, there is more to the truth about what's actually happening within that organization. This is a multi-layered story, so hold on tight. Additionally, each layer will alter your perception of Indiana in the Caitlin Clark era. Let's start at the beginning of the issue before we even discuss what Cox stated. No one could have predicted what would happen when Caitlin Clark, the first overall pick in the 2024 Wnba draft, departed the stage. The basketball community knew this. The most popular athlete in women's sports history smashed records at the University of Iowa. Millions of people watched, purchased jerseys, and purchased seats. The Fever was controlling a movement rather than only selecting a participant. That movement brought with it expectations, criticism, and pressure that most franchises never encountered. The front desk employees were aware of this. However, there is a big difference between understanding something in theory and actually experiencing it. In 2024, Caitlin Clark had an incredible rookie campaign. Her average was 19. With 2 points and 8 assists per game, he led the league. In both the first and ninth seasons, the Fever team she led made it to the postseason. She received the Rookie of the Year award. She was chosen for the first squad of the WNBA. In addition, she broke records for jersey sales, ticket sales, and viewership. Just the Fever's jersey sales increased by 1,193% when Indiana arrived. The arenas were fully occupied. Primetime slots were being cleared by networks. It was unprecedented in women's basketball. Amid all of this pandemonium, a 22-year-old young man was hidden away in the locker room, attempting to learn how to manage a professional team while taking on the obligations of an entire sport. Caitlin Clark, but an unanticipated event put everything at risk. Everything was meant to come together for the 2025 season. Stephanie White, the new coach, changed the offensive strategy. They brought in veterans. There were more players on the roster. There were a lot of high expectations. However, the injury bug began to bite on nearly the first day of the season. In May, Caitlin Clark also suffered a left quad injury. In June, I suffered a left groin injury that never healed. She then had a right groin injury on July 15th, right before she was scheduled to return. It was over after that. She was seen wearing street clothes on the sidelines of game after game. The supporters were upset. There were loud criticism. There were rumors on every conceivable platform regarding her health, the team's communication, and the real situation at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the content. It may surprise you to learn that almost 83% of viewers have not yet subscribed. Even though it only takes a second and is free, it means the world to us. Have you already subscribed? Fantastic. I sincerely appreciate your help. Let's return to the video now. Then there was the social media post on September 4th that caused everyone in the basketball community to stop scrolling. It was verified by Caitlin Clark that she was finished for the year. She answered, "Disappointed isn't a big enough word to describe how I am feeling." The season had ended. She had only participated in 13 games. However, at the time, this was not receiving enough attention. The general manager of the Fever was about to make a much more significant statement than most people had anticipated. As she took the microphone, Amber Cox didn't hold back. She clarified that Caitlin Clark had fulfilled all conditions to be permitted to reappear in that court. Cox said, "No one worked harder than Caitlin," during exit interviews with the team. Nothing like "nobody wanted to be out on the court more than Caitlin" would be said by an executive defending the brand. These are the words of someone who has seen a player go through rehabilitation on a daily basis and fail for no fault of her own. Cox's official written statement claims that Clark worked out for hours each day in an attempt to make a comeback. There just wasn't enough time left in the season for her to safely return, she continued. Amber Cox stated, "So the organization decided to shut her down, making it clear that long-term health will always take precedent over a risky comeback." However, Cox's most provocative statement had nothing to do with the injuries. It was about the future. At this point, things start to become interesting. Cox did not hedge when reporters questioned him about the future. She refrained from using ambiguous language while discussing potential or possibilities. She gave them a direct look and expressed her belief that when Caitlin Clark returned in 2026, they would witness her reach new heights. "I think we're going to see another level," Cox remarked. "It is unimaginable to even think of." Remember that during an injury-plagued 2025 season, this athlete averaged 16 points, 5 assists, and 8 points per game in just 13 games. He was chosen for the All-Star team for the second consecutive year. Despite playing only a little part of the season, she dominated the national conversation about women's basketball, and the team manager asserts that she hasn't even used a brand new piece of equipment yet. It's not a statement for public relations. It should be noted by the rest of the WNBA. But it wasn't just Caitlin Clark's talent that gave Amber Cox more self-assurance. She also revealed another facet of Clark's management of her sidelines time. This is the part of the story that distinguishes Clark from the others. When they are injured and unable to compete, most elite athletes go dark. They can occasionally be seen at games. They wave to the audience before disappearing into the training area. That wasn't done by Caitlin Clark. And although she was out due to injury, Clark was on that plane for every road trip the Fever took. She was vocal, involved, and focused despite sitting on the bench during every game, supporting teammates in real time. Cox described her as an excellent friend and leader during a time when most players would have quietly accepted a lower role. Kelsey Mitchell, who scored a career-high 22 points per game and assumed the offensive load while Caitlin Clark was sidelined, stated in a podcast interview that she was angry about Clark's timing but emphasized that getting her back at 100% was always the best course of action. "I've had a lot of injuries because I'm a person who has had 11 surgeries," said Kelsey Mitchell. "Now that I have that viewpoint, I see things differently." Despite his incapacitation, it was no accident that Clark's influence was changing the way this squad operated. The Fevers have a true chemistry that no front office can match, as you can see just looking around the locker room. The Trace Letches, a close-knit team of Clark, Lexi Hull, and Sophie Cunningham, were discussed by teammates. While watching from the bench, players talked with Aaliyah Boston about Clark's pregame routines. Kelly Krauskopf, president of the Fever, stated that the young core had made one particular request when questioned about the culture prior to the start of the 2025 season. The front office's pursuit of a big celebrity deal infuriated them. They desired the security of their locker room. "Protect the culture that we've started," was exactly what the players said. You see, a team that is internally disintegrating doesn't talk like that. That is the rhetoric of a group that is aware of what they have and is unwilling to change it. However, not everyone has been prepared to embrace them. Additionally, everything was in risk of crumbling before it had a chance to breathe due to the scandal surrounding this locker room. You recall the time Cheryl Swoops lighted a match on Gil's Arena if you were watching the WNBA in late 2024. The Hall of Famer claimed that there was a lot of conflict among the Indiana Fever group and hinted that players were uneasy with Caitlin Clark's attention. "There's a lot of other stuff going on that players are like, 'This ain't where I want to be,'" stated Swoops. The assertion quickly became well known online. For weeks, it was one of the most talked about stories in women's basketball, complete with arguments, screenshots, and viewpoints. There was only one issue. Cheryl Swoops acknowledged that she wasn't in the locker room when questioned about the details. There was no proof. The story was not co-signed by any player. While seated with Sue Bird and Diana Taurasi at a later March Madness broadcast in April 2025, Caitlin Clark addressed the rumors head-on. Recognizing that people often assume they know what goes on behind closed doors, she said that the personnel in that facility were the only ones who actually knew the facts. She said that the disturbance was more related to individuals who were successful than anything that was going on in Indiana. Then, in 2025, the Indiana Fever's on-court performance without their idol was more impactful than any press conference. Consider what Indiana managed to achieve over the season without Caitlin Clark. They advanced to a winner-take-all Game 5 in the semifinals, defeated the Atlanta Dream in the first round of the playoffs, and won the WNBA Commissioner's Cup for the first time in team history. Their first trip to the WNBA championships in more than 10 years was only one victory away, and without their most crucial player on every bench and sidelines, Clark was yelling encouragement, assigning defensive tasks, and celebrating each basket as though she had made it herself. Not only was Amber Cox's assessment of her leadership positive, it was also true. Even though Clark was unable to show her intensity on the court, the numbers, outcomes, and spirit of that run all pointed to a franchise that had internalized it. At this point, things start to become serious. The Indiana Fever, under the leadership of Amber Cox, are striving for a potential dynasty in 2026 rather than just a comeback season. The whole off-season was condensed into a few weeks due to the protracted talks between the Wnba and the Players' Union, which took almost a year to conclude in early 2026. Expansion drafts altered the league rosters of two new teams, the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo. Cox remained composed even though the Fever lost 2 players in the process. From the end of the season to each subsequent roster change, her message remained constant. Their first goal is to keep Kelsey Mitchell in a Fever uniform. Cox told reporters, "I'm going to sound like a broken record from last year. The first priority will be to keep Kelsey Mitchell wearing a Fever jersey." Indiana will have the most complete core in the league going into the 2017 season with Mitchell back in the running and contracts already in place for Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. Nevertheless, the headline did not cause the basketball community to back down. Even Amber Cox was ecstatic when Caitlin Clark appeared as a special contributor on Basketball Night in America among icons like Carmelo Anthony, Vince Carter, and Tracy McGrady. "This will be very insightful and entertaining," Cox commented on social media. "I had no trouble tucking CC in. Clark is the most famous person in basketball, according to NBC executive producer Sam Flood. Not women's or collegiate basketball. Give up entirely." Even before the 2026 WNBA season begins on May 8, Clark is already working on such a platform. Additionally, Clark responded immediately when questioned about the Fever's chances of winning the title on that NBC platform. She remarked, "I think we're going to be the favorite to win it all." That response was mostly unaffected by the media. "I think it adds a little pressure, but that's what you like about it. But our support staff, coach, and squad are all outstanding. I'm ecstatic." After spending a whole season on the sidelines, that person had been quietly growing and seething in yearning, and now she was prepared to let go of all she had been suppressing. And Cox's faith in the appearance of Caitlin Clark? The rest of the WNBA is concerned about the entire situation because of this. When you stand back and take a good look at the entire picture, it tells you this. After a disappointing season, Amber Cox didn't just speak up to ease her supporters' anxieties or deal with the negative publicity. She spoke up because she has seen firsthand what this player is capable of, experienced the chaos of the spotlight, dealt with the rumors and controversy, kept the locker room cohesive when injuries came from all sides, and left the experience more convinced than ever that Caitlin Clark hasn't yet realized that the teammates have seen it. That's what the coach has stated. It has been verified by the GM. When the team enters the 2026 season with a deeper roster, real hunger, and a complete year of adversity to hone them into something more dangerous and tough, the only question remaining is whether the rest of the WNBA is actually prepared for what is about to unfold. Because the version of Caitlin Clark that appears in May 2026 won't resemble anything the league has ever seen if Amber Cox is correct, as the evidence indicates. The clubs that have been skeptical of this team over the past year may also want to carefully consider whether they are ready for what it entails. A comment made in Indianapolis has sparked a lot of debate in the basketball community. At last, Amber Cox, general manager of the Fever, raised her voice. Additionally, her remarks on Caitlin Clark went beyond a corporate press release. Because it was clear-cut, truthful, and full of information, it portrayed a picture that most fans had never seen. Beyond what you've read in a headline, there is more to the truth about what's actually happening within that organization. Hold on, for this is a multi-layered story that will alter your perception of Indiana in the time of Caitlin Clark. Let's start at the beginning of the issue before we even discuss what Cox stated. No one could have predicted what would happen when Caitlin Clark, the first overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, departed the stage. The basketball community knew this. The most well-known athlete in women's sports history broke attendance records at Iowa, and millions of people purchased tickets and jerseys. The Fever was controlling a movement rather than only selecting a participant. That movement was accompanied by expectations, criticism, and pressure that most franchises never encountered. This was known to the front desk employees, but knowing something in theory is not the same as really experiencing it. In 2024, Clark had an incredible rookie campaign. 19 on average. She led the league with 2 points per game. To ensure you don't miss anything, please leave a comment, subscribe, and turn on all alerts. After you click the video on the screen, I'll see you in the next one.